Welcome to season 15 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and today I have back with me writer extraordinaire Joel Drucker. Joel and I met a million years ago, like 20 years ago now, at the US Open, well before Parenting Aces was even in existence or even a thought in my mind. And I had the pleasure of meeting him as he was working on a story on Ryan and Christian Harrison. Now, you recently heard or saw the podcast I did with their sister, Madison, but years ago, the two boys were still in juniors, and Joel was writing a piece on them. As you'll know, I grew up with Ryan and Christian and Madison's dad and his whole family, actually, and they introduced me to Joel, and we have maintained a friendship ever since. But let me give you a little bit of his background, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss anything. Joel is one of the world's leading tennis writers. Over the last 40 years, his stories have appeared in a wide range of media outlets, including tennis.com, the Tennis Channel, HBO, CBS, the New York Times, and many more. His first book, Jimmy Connor's Saved My Life, which if you haven't read it, go get it and read it. It's super, super interesting. It's considered one of the 6 best tennis books of all time by Esquire. Joel is also the historian at large for the International Tennis Hall of Fame, and this year also became the executive editor of the leading edge instructional publication, tennisplayer.net, a publication that focuses extensively on providing content aimed directly at juniors and parents. And big surprise, Joel is offering a 30%, let me double check my notes. A 30% discount to all of you on your first year of tennisplayer.net. The promo code will be in the show notes. So wherever you're consuming this podcast, make sure you check the show notes for that promo code and the link to go redeem it for 30% off your first year. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with my friend, Joel Drucker. Joel, welcome back. Great to see your smiling face as always. And I'm super excited to hear what you're up to these days.
Well, the very exciting thing for me these days is working as executive editor of tennisplayer.net. This is a leading edge instructional site that focuses a lot on learning, competing, improving, lots of instructional content. This site was founded by the late John Yandell, who was a real visionary and pioneer in the world of video, visual technology. There are more than 100,000 slow motion videos in our archive, 1,600 articles over a 20-year period. John really went all over the place shooting players and really giving some really granular details on what things are really going on when you hit the ball. What's top spin? What's a kick serve? Where does pronation come from? Some real deep dives into strokes and techniques. And I've been working with the publication since roughly last November, December, and things are going great. It's a really exciting time. A lot of interesting things that we're up to.
It's funny, I had the pleasure of meeting John years ago at the very beginning of Parenting Aces. I was at a conference and he was one of the presenters there. And of course, I knew about his site and I was kind of fangirling a little bit around him, listening to him talk about the work that he's done. And I think it's really cool that you've taken over the helm there.
Yeah, it's a great team that was in place. John's widow, Isabel Santos, and Giancarlo Andriani, who's kind of the art director of Guru. We've got a new publisher, Matt Pressman, who's also the publisher of Florida Tennis. So we bring a lot of skills, a lot of ideas, lots of different things. Again, really focused on quality instruction, on ways that help people understand things, ways also not just for a lot of this, and a lot of this is aimed at the people you talk to, Lisa, juniors who want to improve, juniors who are 12, 13, 17 years old, and they want to take some significant steps forward with their tennis.
Yeah, and it's an unbelievable library of information that is at your fingertips on your phone, on your computer, wherever you go. I think it's really cool, and I want to just kind of point out the last time I think you came on the podcast, you were doing a profile on Eva Jovic, and she was just starting to kind of take that step into professional tennis. Oh my gosh, what a difference a couple years make.
Well, it's just the growth of her game. I mean, now she's a top 20 player, which is fantastic. I mean, she's really soared. She got to quarterfinals of the Australian Open. She's playing week after week. She put a lot of work to get even stronger. I mean, she's involved with the USTA, so just a great player. And it's neat to see her playing well and enjoying it. I thought, well, it was very easy to write about Eva because her engagement with tennis was pure and driven by her. There's nothing in it that threw a red flag at me. So, ooh, parent, ooh, sibling, which you and I have seen many, many times. So it was almost easy, and I was able to kind of address the different ways a player like that is talked about and how they negotiate all those things. So she's terrific. It's great to see Eva doing so well. And of course, it's just the beginning of what probably what she hopes is 15, 20 years. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I love getting to see her out there, and it's so fun. And I like you, I got introduced to her pretty young and was told early on in her development, keep an eye on this one. And not that I'm one to, do stuff like that, but it was just fun for me as a fan of the game to see her develop through the juniors, transition into the pro game, and have such great success so far.
No, it's terrific. She's great. Though at the same time, I've never won when someone tells me about some rising player to say, "Oh yeah, this one, yeah, they're going to do things." Like somebody asked me a while ago about how many slams I thought this young player was going to win. I said, what are you talking about? I'm about the process, not outcome, and I don't like to make predictions. I don't like to do that kind of what forecasting, that kind of
Right.
forecasting.
Yeah. So let's dive into junior tennis development from your perspective, which is the perspective of a former junior player who fell in love with the game at a young age, has stayed with tennis, and we're the same generation, Joel. So we've both been around this game for, 60
Decades.
years.
I would have stopped it if you'd said decades, Lisa. Decades,
Okay,
but
decades,
a while,
decades.
a while,
Yes, a
right?
while. And you've seen a lot of changes in the way players are developed starting at a young age, going through juniors, going to college, going into the pro tour, or going into adult league play, whatever it is they may do. And you've been a student of the game this whole time. And so I think you bring such a unique perspective to talking about junior tennis development. And that's why I always love getting you on, because you make me think about things that other people don't think about.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Lisa. And I mean, to me, the whole development process, it really is writing about tennis is about human development. I mean, I've talked to tennis players from age 8 to 98 and how they develop because it's this lifelong sport and how you stay engaged with it. So if we're looking at the contemporary world of junior tennis, look, what do we see? We see a lot of concern about outcomes, a lot of energy on scholarships, and that troubles me. And a lot of I've never heard anyone say they're playing so many practice sets says, wow, that's good. I think that the practice sets I think are dying, and that I find very disturbing. I talk to juniors who tell me they're playing 3 practice sets a week. I mean, Lisa,
And that's a lot, Joel. And that's a lot.
the closest I ever got to Wimbledon was writing about it, and I played 8 practice sets a week. All I am is an okay civilian, and I find there's something. I just wonder about these academies. Not we'll put aside the ones where you go away and you sleep there. I'm talking about the ones in a local community, and I wonder what's going on in those. Are they getting personal instruction? Are they competing? Are these like clinics? What's a clinic? And I get concerned about that. I get concerned that have the teaching pros figured out a way to monetize their facility, and the parents are paying what do they pay for these, Lisa? 60 a day? 100 a day?
I mean, at least, yes.
Right, and it's kind of a convenient form of putting your child somewhere. And where is the problem solving? Where's the problem solving? Where's the skill building that helps them learn to engage with the game? I'm not talking about becoming a player. I'm just becoming someone who can engage with the game and play it for life and have a lot of skills and have a lot of shots you can draw and different options. And that concerns me.
Well, and it's interesting because every time you and I talk, you tell me about things you're doing to improve your own game. And I think about that from where I sit, and I'm kind of the mindset at this point, my game's not going to get any better. I just have to keep my body healthy so I can keep playing. That's kind of where I'm
Yeah,
at.
of course your game can get better. Of course it can. You can just apply yourself. The other thing you work on. I mean, the thing that diminishes, okay, what diminishes? Probably raw foot speed. So
Yes, for sure.
when I serve in volley, which I still do 100% of the time in doubles, I have to remind myself I have to double down on getting to net quickly, to really double down on doing that and really get in there a little quicker and do that. But the other things, what the coordination, the strokes, techniques, tactics, awareness around the court, all these things can be improved our whole life.
True. And you have to put the effort in. And I guess for me personally, I just want to go out and play. I don't want to worry about that.
Okay.
So
So
that's kind of my
you're
personal
working on
place.
competing. So you play a lot of practice sets.
Right, in the form of league play.
Right.
So
That look, there are all these models people do, but of course we're talking about juniors and their development,
yes.
how they go
Yes.
about improving. I mean, one of my favorite stories to tell about juniors is I was playing with a young boy, he was young man, whatever, 12, 13 years old. He was getting good enough to beat kind of the plausible hack 4-5s like me, the 4-5 players. And now he's playing doubles. And he's staying back, he's serving and staying back, and he's just wailing forehands past us. And he's enjoying that. I said to his dad, he needs to serve and volley in doubles versus us. He needs to build that skill. Because that's the skill build to do. And the dad says, well, he's playing the game of today. And I go, I don't want your child playing the game of today. I want him playing the game of tomorrow. Because the game of
Yeah.
tomorrow is going to beat the game of today. And by the way, the game of tomorrow is the game of all eternity. How many people swoon over Roger Federer? Do you think there's a single tactic Roger Federer ever ran that hadn't been done before? That's Sabre. That is a 100-year-old tactic. Drop
Yeah.
shot, approach shot. I can do that on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Wide serves, slice backhands, all these things that people love that Federer do. So why doesn't the kid learn them? But I think there's what struck me in junior tennis for many years is a narrowing of skills. It's like, what's going to work for us now to win matches, get scholarship?
Right. And let's talk about Get Scholarship because as we've all learned, the scholarships are diminishing. The roster spots, especially for American kids, are diminishing. And so that needs to adjust. Either American kids need to get a whole lot better. How do they do that? Not by doing the same thing they've been doing the last 10 years, right? There needs to be a shift in the way we're developing our players in this country so that they are competitive with their peers around the globe, who college coaches, by the way, see all the time and want to come on their teams. But also, I think, we're, as parents, we go into this maybe with a pure goal, but very quickly it gets skewed into what am I going to get at the end of this? I'm
Well, now you're
spending
and it's doing
all this money,
and
right?
what's going on with that, then that's turning the child into a commodity.
Right.
Then it's
And
investing.
we've talked about that before and the danger of that with not just the child's well being, but the parent child relationship as well.
I'm glad when I wrote a paper on Thomas Jefferson and got a good grade, my mother didn't say, God, keep writing papers about presidents. You'll get a scholarship to a good school. But Mom, I want to write about Thomas Edison instead of Andrew Jackson. No, you've got to keep writing about that because you're going to get a scholarship. How much do you think by the time I was 19 I would ever want to think about a president? And I think what if the purpose of junior tennis was not to get a scholarship? What if the purpose of junior tennis was to become a good tennis player?
Hmm.
And where the game takes you, it takes Lisa, how many people, all right, in the Southern California, 16 sectionals. What percentage of those will get scholarships?
Ooh, I mean, it'd be great if it's 1%.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's say, okay, there are 128 people in that draw. So maybe five of them get scholarships. 120 of them will. So maybe the purpose of junior tennis should not be to attain the outcome, which is kind of a way of saving, please save us several $100,000. That's why
Yes.
I'm doing this. I'm doing this to save you money. I mean, you don't
Yes.
really. I know someone. She did a thing. She added up the money of the academies, camps, lessons, tournaments, and then it kind of balanced out to the same as 4 years of college. You know what I mean? It's like so.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
No,
you
you're,
went through this to your son. So
yeah.
I just think it's funny. We in on tennisplayer.net we have an issue about things in junior tennis. And one of the things we have is an article by Barry Buss, the accomplished UCLA player, who's written about kind of the whole psychology of the game. It's kind of so you're going to nationals for the first time, and how do you manage it? And one of the great things he says is, here's something you should say after your kid's match. Do you want Mexican or Italian for lunch?
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
should. That's and you see, you were out there with your son, so you witnessed all this.
But we know this, and this is the challenge for tennis parents. We know this intellectually, but what happens when you bring emotion into it? All of a sudden, this intellectual knowledge that we've gained goes out the window because we're so distraught that our kid didn't beat this kid who he's beaten 12 other times, right?
So the parent needs lessons. The parent needs. I always talk to a mother about
Hello.
this. She was learning to watch a match without without getting too excited and just maintaining that kind of chilled out quality or just positive quality. And I said, yeah, it's like that movie, Silence of the Moms. You got to have that. And a coach said to me, Brad Stein, the great coach, I was talking to him about coaching, but now you're around an entourage. You've got several players on the pro level. He says, our job is to support but not excite. I don't want to look over to my box and see people pumping their fists when I break serve at 1-all, like I'm playing Davis Cup in South America.
Yeah.
I want people just maintaining a positive vibe through it. But a lot of people, a lot of parents, don't have as much experience being around sports and competition and tennis, so they can get caught up in, yeah, winning that match, all that stuff.
But here's the thing, Joel. There's some kids that want that from their parents, and then there are other kids that don't. And so if the parent and the child aren't having that conversation about what is it that you want and need from me when you're on the tournament court, how's the parent supposed to know what to do? I mean, your default is to yell and cheer and, be
They're supposed to
emotive
listen
out
to your
there.
podcast. They're supposed to listen to your podcast and learn how to behave themselves. And what they need to do is show some leadership. The kid should not want the parent raising their fist when they lose a break point. The parent should say, no, that's not good for you in the long term. I don't want your nervous system going like a roller coaster when we're living and dying this match together. I want you to go play the match, and I'm there to support you, but I'm not there to excite you. That's up to
And
you.
right, and I agree with that. And I think there are kids who want their parents clapping when they hit a
Clapping
good
for
shot.
positively is what I think is
Right.
one thing, but I just mean if the kid says it's okay for you to do that, for you to pump, the parents should say, no, no, that's not okay in the long term. I know you'd like that, but I'm not here to just give you what you want. Here's what you need. And what you need is a guiding force because we can't just play our first round match like it's this roller coaster because there's a second round match and there's going to be another match. And we need to maintain
Hopefully.
some sustainability and scalability so we're in this game for life. So instead of the idea that if I do this well, I'll get a scholarship. How about I just learn to do this well? Or how about I just learn to enjoy this for
Yeah.
what it is? And things I was talking to a coach once. He said, if this player of mine does things well and wins matches, they can really get somewhere. I go, where? Why? What's the point? Now it's like a reach. What are you, a venture capitalist? Like they'll accomplish something. Why can't it just be valuable in its own right? I've spent 40 years writing about tennis in all sorts of ways that are metaphoric and conjectural and narrative and all these things. And actually, I know all these other things about the world through tennis. It's like I call it like my lens for the world. The writer William Faulkner had the South. I have tennis. But I'll say one thing. The one thing I've learned most from all this time around tennis, I've learned how to play tennis. That's the most, and that's fine in its own right. Just like any other endeavor, be it art or dance or music, doesn't
Yeah.
need to have a return on investment attached to it.
But you think about it from the perspective of the amount of time and money that families invest in their children's development. And it's hard to say to somebody, not hard, it's hard for somebody to hear, you're going to spend upwards of $150,000, and that's conservative, on your child's tennis development. And at the end of the day, you've spent $150,000 and it's gone. And in return for that $150,000, your child is learning a skill. They're learning life lessons. They're learning how to negotiate difficult circumstances. There are all these, we've talked about this a million times, all the things that tennis teaches us. But the likelihood of you ever seeing that $150,000 again is minuscule. How many parents are going to say okay to that
Well,
when
what do
they
they
can
stand?
sign their kid up for the local soccer team or the school baseball league or whatever, and it's costing a fraction of that?
Well, that's one of the sad things about tennis is the cost of entry and access and this travel and tournaments and all of that. That's a great point. Um, I think the parent has to see that if it's something a child wants to do and they can afford it, it's not supposed to be about the investment. I mean, my parent, well, we got you these books. We gave you music lessons. We sent you to art camp. They don't look for that. They don't look for that. They may be those things may be less expensive, maybe,
Yes.
but at the same time, we bought you clothing. Wow, we bought you new clothes. Where's our return on that? I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't want to just say it's the cost of doing business, but those are good questions. But I think to imbue it with any expectations of outcome. There we go. We recouped. We got a half scholarship. There we go. Because you realize how that poisons through youth a child's way. So a typical scenario like
Sure.
this young man I was playing with. So let's say now he wants to learn to serve in volley and doubles, and the
Yeah.
teacher starts to teach it to him. And then what happens? He plays practice matches. He's losing. And he's a little frustrated. And the parent is saying, "Oh my God!" Or the coach says, "You know what? Why don't you serve and volley 5 times in each of your matches in next week's tournament?" And he loses the points. And the parent sees him lose the point. And then everyone and the parent, oh my God! And everyone is going on a panic attack. And that poisons the kid's tennis too, right?
But there's a disconnect in that story you just told. The disconnect is the parent doesn't understand what the coach is telling the student and why, because they haven't had that conversation, right? If the coach wants the kid to do something in a competitive setting, and 99 times out of 100 the coach isn't sitting there watching that tournament match, it's the parent who's
That's
there.
another broken model of the tennis thing. And I don't know what the fix is, but the whole thing, for example, it's funny. I talk with coaches sometimes at conferences. You guys are coaches? When's the last time you watched your student play a match? You're an instructor. You're an instructor. And right, and there is that disconnect. You're so right. So it's up to the coach, and the coach has to be willing sometimes to say to the parent the things that the parent doesn't want to hear.
Absolutely, and has to teach us
Right.
how to be good tennis parents,
That's right.
because the coach is doing things with our child day to day on the tennis court and in conversation while they're picking up balls. If we're not privy to that, and then the kid's in a tournament and we're the only adult in charge of our child at that tournament, and we have no idea what the coach has been working on and what they've told our child to do in this tournament situation, of course we're going to get frustrated if they're doing something we don't know about and we haven't seen before. And on top of that, oh my God, they're losing the match. I mean, holy cow.
Right. Quit the serve and volley. Don't do it. Right. And so then the parent will say, I've had a parent say to me, yeah, I want he's making my kid play like a robot. He's making him serve volley and doubles. He's building his skills. And so that's where it's up to the coach to explain that to the parent, and for the coach to say it in an appropriate way, but also have the coach know this is how I see your child developing, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about communication. I use the C word all the time. And, if we want these relationships to work and to thrive, the communication piece has to be there.
Well, it's so hard. It's such a complicated triangle between the parents and the player and the coach, and the parents who shop for different coaches and they hear word of the other coach who's doing really good things because and all this language is terrible. Like I hear, how many players has he produced? No one ever produced a player except a player. Factories produce
Right.
cars, and so they're looking at and there's this coach and but again, this is where I sometimes assign some responsibility to the coaches for the setups they have, these group environs of these workout things. What's going on? Is that private instruction? Is that development? What's going on here? I mean, again,
And I think there has to be a mix, though, Joel, because especially in the younger years, these kids need the social aspect of group lessons, group drills, and that type of thing. They need
well,
friends in the sport.
well, right. So then the question, okay, so then it's okay. Then it's one one private a week. With the social, everyone talks about the social part. Go to school, make friends. Like, don't just homeschool. Don't
Yeah.
how the social part. You mean the social part is being in a line with another kid hitting a ball and giving him a high five when he hits an inside out winner? I know you. So I think parents need a real kind of Copernican revolution in how they see what the mix of things instead of just dropping off. I mean, I look at some of these places, they sound to me like daycare for teenagers.
Some of them are. Let's be real. Some of the coaches don't really have the knowledge base to develop players, to have a plan to get them from age 6 to 18.
Well, that's okay.
And
They don't have to have every year. I mean, my
no, but they
first
have to
grade.
have some idea of a progression. What are the expectations? What are the things? If Is it important to be number one in your age group in the 12 and unders, or is it more important to be number one in your age group in the 16s and
Well,
18s?
no one would say it's the more important. Everyone would say it's more important in the later stages. But again, I think, for example, I'm not a fan of goals. I'm a fan of visions. I'm a fan of skills. I'm a fan. I mean, goals put you at the limit of what you know, of only what you know. What you don't know is that I think goals can be very narrow. I think goals can be very narrow, and I want to. What does a parent know about who hasn't played or study or been around the game that much know about what it means to try to improve at something and the kid and how does a child begin to set what their goals are? They're not about setting goals. It's about improvement and skills. And like we were talking about lessons. Group lessons aren't lessons. When you're very young, they're lessons. Okay, you're in a group. But at a certain point, you need private instruction. I think one of the things to get back to skills, I notice a great many players don't serve that well. And why? Because the serve is not a group lesson shot. The serve is personal attention. And
Yeah.
that requires singular attention on the player only. And that's not something where you have three to six kids on a court and some guy making the rounds and saying throw your toss higher. That's and so I think parents need to think about where they really put their tennis dollars. If they're spending $400 a week to put their kid in clinics. What's being learned? What's being learned in a clinic?
Hopefully, technique,
How?
hopefully,
How?
because the kids are hitting one at a time.
But there's no teaching going on. You're just hitting. So why do you need a clinic? Good. Why don't I just spend money for that? Let me get three kids and 12 balls and let's,
Because nobody does that anymore. And
I
this
know,
is
I know, but I'm
right.
not,
But I mean, you and I have been preaching this message for decades now. Like, go out and play. Tennis doesn't always have to involve paying somebody to play tennis.
well, right. And parents get seduced into these local academies and sometimes they become like Mooney cults.
That is true.
They
That is true.
become they become a thing where you drop the kid off. And granted, there's some geographic factors too. Oh God, I got to take my kid to a practice match here and a practice match there, and this place is all centralized. But I did some stories recently on the iconic Jack Kramer Club in Rolling Hills. I talked to people like Tracy Austin, Elliot Telcher. First of all right, they were working with the great Robert Lansdorp. How many hours a week do you think Tracy Austin or Elliot Telcher was on the court with Robert Lansdorp?
I have no idea.
Take a guess.
A week, I would say maybe 4,
One or two.
10.
A
Okay.
lesson. And often a 30-minute lesson.
Yeah.
How many practice sets do you think Elliot Telcher played when he was 16 years old a week?
Oh, I'm going to guess at least 12.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, you're in the ballpark. That's right. So that's what's going on. That was
Right.
kind of like a
Because
local
that's what you and I did growing up. We didn't have paid drills, paid lessons every day. Or
hardly
maybe we
drills.
did for a half an hour or an hour, but then we were, okay, let's go play a set. Okay, now let's go play a set.
Well, we were playing a set and they were playing three. And that's why
Yeah.
you and I are here. And that's all good. It's all for different reasons, but I just think, and I know there are all sorts of things around driving and hours and all these things, but again, yeah, you and I talk about this stuff. It's some real different thinking about how people approach this stuff and what they go about learning.
Yeah. Let's talk about tennisplayer.net and where it fits into the junior tennis journey.
Well, we are trying to really bring insightful instruction, ideas about we have each month we dedicate to a specific aspect of the game, be it a stroke, such as March was all about the serve, and we had people like Alexander Stevenson and Rick Meyer, Peter Freeman, and talking about what Kyle Lacroix, talking about what makes a serve, different aspects of the serve. Rick Meyer wrote an article just about the toss. And so we want to bring some granular detail to these things to really understand what goes on with swings and shots. I mean, that's based on the archival library we have of well over 100,000 slow motion videos and 1,500 stories and all things that people can look at for that. And also look at some topics that aren't just technique, but for example, I want to look at the whole transition game. What's an approach shot? How do we view the net? I'm working an article on the chip and charge return, on how that gets played. I want people to understand as much about the game as broadly as possible. Like our motto is learn, compete, improve. Learn, compete, improve. And that's what we want people to do again and again and to engage with our site that way and really learn from some of our experts. And we've got Tim Mayotte wrote something for us on the return of serve. We did a lot of work at Racket X in Miami, where we put on several seminars with teachers and looked at different techniques, different things. Casey Curtis, who is Milos Raonic's coach, showed us some very interesting ways to approach the serve. And so I think a lot of what and we do things to help teach teachers how to do things. I'm always struck. One thing I'll often ask a teacher, I said, how do you teach the forehand volley? And they'll show me the stroke. I go, I didn't ask how you hit it. I ask how you teach it. What do you do? And we have an article on how to teach the slice backhand, on what to do to get your student to learn it. Not just, oh, look at this beautiful slice backhand, as much as how do you teach it and go about learning it. So we're very much focused on ambitious, zealous players, those kind of juniors. That's why we've had people write for us over the Rick Macy has written stuff over the years. And like I mentioned, some of the others, Alexander Stevenson, Chris Lewitt, who wrote the great book about Spanish tennis, about the secrets of Spanish tennis, all that stuff.
Yeah. And it's the progressions that they're writing about, right? And you start here. Once you can do this, you move to this next stage of it, right?
Well,
Is
that's
that
part of
part of
learning.
it?
That's certainly part of learning, but I think
Yeah.
that's going to happen. That's going to happen. But it's also okay. You got a reasonable amount of skill. You do something, and I think like Alexandra wrote a great article for us about how to get your body organized just before you hit the serve. How do you stand truly? How do you approach the toss? What's the whole rotational aspect? She worked with Pete Fisher, who was Pete Sampras's serve guru, and Alexandra at one point had one of the best serves on the WTA tour. And what are some things to learn and also ways to practice it? What are some
Yeah.
drills you can do by yourself, with someone in your living room, in your driveway? I mean, there's so many things that these great players have done to improve that are not just as simple as playing sets, but not as overly taxing as just drills. As just a drill.
Yeah.
What are some pointed drills you can do? What's something you can do in 15 minutes to work on a specific shot?
And what I think is so interesting about this, Joel, is if a child is really committed to getting as good as they can get within whatever confines they're in, whether it's financial restrictions, time, their physical limitations, whatever. But if they are truly committed to getting as good as they can get, to have this kind of a resource available to them is invaluable because they're going to be hungry for this.
Well, that's right. We went hungry tennis players. That's a great call. Maybe that's what we should say for the hungry tennis player. That's right. The one who wants to devour and really study things. Well, where do I put my feet when I'm serving? Where should I stand to return? What do I want to do? What if I do want to come in on my return? How do I do that? What do I need to understand about the volley that's not taught? I mean, I have a whole personal, this is generational, I'm certain, but it's also from things I've learned. I think the volley is going like further down than the semicolon. It's just you don't just see it that much. And I see the way it's taught. I don't like a lot of the way it's taught because a lot of people who teach now are in kind of what I would call the post Lendl into Agassi era, where the volley wasn't as much part of the game, and so it's an incidental thing. And we're going to have articles. We have articles that look at how to volley effectively and how it's taught. And look, I get it. There are many ways it's taught, but I think it's scarcely taught. And
Mm,
we get back to American players vying for scholarships or vying for spots on college teams. Why don't you do something that's different from the way everyone plays? Because that'll help you stand out.
yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
know this, a kid who can become really, really good at doubles and volley is gonna capture the coach's fancy
Yeah,
in a way
absolutely.
that the other kid may not. But on the other hand, I watch college tennis, high level college tennis, and I swear 50% of those kids, they hit the ball harder. I have better volley technique than them. Technique.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And another aspect of what makes tennisplayer.net so useful to our audience is we have a lot of families that don't live in tennis hotbeds. I get this all the time. I live in this small town. There aren't great coaches around. There aren't other players playing at the level my child wants to play. There aren't a lot of tournaments in our area. So everything becomes way more expensive and way more time consuming. How amazing if they just get a subscription to tennisplayer.net. Now I'm sounding like an infomercial, but honestly, like, you don't have a great coach in your town, but you've got this incredible archive of articles, videos from some of the top coaches and top players in the game.
oh, no question about that. And it's right, that's right. And from all over the world and have been gathered for 20 years, right? And we have people want to subscribe, they can get a 30% discount if they subscribe and they use the code ParentingAces30.
Yeah,
That's ParentingAces 30. And they go use that promotional code and you get a 30% discount. And yeah, we very much like the fact that there's a tremendous archive, past stories, real detailed looks at strokes with some tremendously compelling slow motion video. And you're so right. I mean, you and I are lucky, Lisa. We've been around kind of areas where there's ample tennis over the years.
yeah.
So that
But
helps.
there are a lot of people who aren't, and the internet has been a gift for people in those situations because all of a sudden now you have access to virtual coaches, sports psychologists. I mean, you can pretty much get anything you need virtually now. But to get this type of, as to use your word, Joel, granular instruction on very detailed minutia of strokes and movement and shot selection and strategy. I mean, holy cow.
Well,
And
that's what's fun about the sites. I mean, very much focused. And again, there aren't as many tennis publications that there used to be. And again, our content is aimed for people who are hungry and playing. I like to think that, for example, our publication, anyone who reads our publication can serve with a proper grip. So it's a little more upper division. Adults who want to get better can do it. I guarantee you, Lisa, you'll find something that'll help you improve. That'll
I
help
know
your
I got
whole
to go
technique.
on and see
That'll help
if
your
y'all got,
technique.
yeah, do y'all have content on serving after frozen shoulder?
We have a great story by Peter Freeman on left-handers and serves. It's so interesting. For example, this gets to some adult themes, and Peter and I talked about he developed a great story about the lefty serve. You and I are both left-handers, and I was played with someone who I'm 5'7". I played with, and I'm 65 years old. I was playing with someone who's about 3 or 4 inches shorter than me, also left-handed, close enough to me in age, and said, "I need to work on my kick serve." I go, "What are you talking about? Why? You're left-handed. Why do you want to learn a serve that's going to hurt your back and bounce up high to your opponent's forehand?" So, and for around the same time, I was talking to Peter. He said all a lefty needs to learn is the many ways to hit the slice serve effectively, but something a little bit more than the one you first learned where you just kind of carve the ball a little bit. And he has some very dynamic things. So I bet there could be something after life after frozen shoulder.
Yeah, I need to go dig in and see what I can find. Whatever it is, it'll beat what I'm doing now. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, so that's great. So yeah, so I just love that we can bring so many ideas to people, looks at the pros, looks at ways to improve, different techniques, different tactics, all of that. It's just very exciting.
So tennisplayer.net. Don't forget to use the code ParentingAces30 for your 30% discount. Check it out. It is well worth your time. And if you have a child who is hungry to get better, this is an incredible, incredible resource for them. Joel, a pleasure
As
as
always,
always.
Lisa, thank you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see
And
you. Great to see
thanks
you.
for coming on. And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.